But before I get into the show, too, I wanted to share with you guys. I did something to make it a lot easier. I've been getting emails and messages and DMs through all the social media channels about trying to figure out a way to get a hold of me and connect with me and ask me questions and that kind of stuff, which is great. That's what I want to do. I want to answer people's questions and be available for anyone that needs help in real estate or thinking about getting into real estate and becoming an agent and getting better. That's what I want to provide back. So over the weekend, with all of my free time, because I was snowed in and iced in and everything else, I decided to do a Linktree for my channel and everything and try to get it all set up. So this is Linktree. I'll copy this in, and I believe I can paste this into the chat, and you guys can have that. That is the link to my Linktree, Agent Mentor Adam there. And let me put this up on the screen just so you can see that as well. Bam, there it is. Sorry for everybody on TikTok. Unfortunately, it won't allow me to do that. But there you go. There's the link. You guys can check it out. The reason why I'm even highlighting this is just it's a central location to answer some of the general questions. I'll be posting more and more and kind of fluffing this up a little bit. You can follow me. You can connect to the YouTube channel on this link there. The one thing I want to point out, though, on this thing is the biggest question I've been asked, and from a lot of viewers, is like and they basically, it was a great statement they gave me. They said, look, you're throwing out a lot of information. You're telling us a lot of helpful tips and things that we can do and how we can, grow our businesses. But is there a way you have something that kind of brings some of it together to kind of give us some focal points? And a lot of them were from new agents. A lot of people were messaging me that were brand new licensed agents. And so I decided to take my past few videos of tips that I was giving as far as building a business and building a real estate company and put it into one simple PDF. And what I've done inside of this, if you go to my Linktree right here, sorry for all this promo, but if you go here and you look at my Linktree, you'll see this part right here. It says the first 28 days. All right, the first 28 days, a real estate agent's ultimate launch manual. So this link right here will take you to a page where you can download this for free, completely free. It does require email and stuff just because it has to verify that you are a real person. So we'll do that. But when you click on this and you download this, you'll have this basically taking my past few live streams. I created kind of like this checklist and ideas and tweak it, make it your own. That's perfectly fine, but it gives you a framework. And let me show you what this looks like just to see if this might help you guys. And I'd like to know in the comments later in the show or even another show what you think about this. But what I've done is I put together a quick little PDF here, right? So we got the first 28 days. We got the mindset, kind of thinking through like what it takes to be a real estate agent, what that looks like. Then I've divided up into weeks and small little action items every single day. Now, this is aimed more specifically at brand new licensed agents, yes. But if you're an experienced agent, chances are you might have gotten relaxed in some of your marketing and some of your initiatives and things that you do, that this could still be beneficial for you. So consider downloading this, looking through this, tweaking it, using it as an idea, and then going from there. But you'll see it's broken up into 4 weeks, okay? And daily activities that you can do. So it's very simple, very straightforward, nothing overwhelmingly each day. So you'll have that breaking down for you. If you go on down, there's other things that I've included in here as well, as I put together kind of an appendix here. And the appendix includes a script bank, most common scripts and things that you can, kind of work into your own verbiage and make it your own. And we'll talk about like kind of like just a simple like update text, like how you can make a touch with past clients, just asking for an update, a FSBO preview request, circle prospecting script, those type of things. Then I broke it down into like, what should you be doing every single day? Because there's like a lot of videos I was putting out that was talking about different things you should be doing each day. And it was like, morning, the revenue zone is what I called that. And you got the lead generating, the follow-up, and then a pillar. In other words, I do this every single day for at least 1 hour. Then you have your afternoon time and what that looks like. And then you have your evening administrative zone. Now, this breaks down into things you're doing outside of the things you need to be doing to make money. And those are like showing properties, listing houses, and meeting with people. So obviously, those are major priority things. So these are the things you do during a day when you do not have appointments set that actually generate the revenue. They are the things you do to keep generating revenue. If you find yourself getting more and more busy in the afternoon, that's when you begin to shift things around and you begin to work that out. And you still try to figure out time to do all of these things, but it's flexible, right? You just begin to work through your schedule. And then I talk about a resource list, the core components of growing a big, strong real estate business. And what you need to have is what is some of the core technology and the resource that you need to have as an agent. These are the very first things you need to address and kind of keeping up on. Then I have an objection sheet, the most common objections that you might hear as a real estate agent, specifically more on the new side, like if you're a new agent, kind of help you get through that hurdle a little bit. But again, still some advantages here for the agents that have been in this for a little while. So that is all inside of this download, completely free, guys. Just if you're interested, feel free to go ahead and just download it. That is absolutely what it's there for. So I just wanted to throw that out there to you guys so you guys have something that hopefully benefits you and takes all the stuff that I'm talking about here and puts it into one PDF, because there's been a lot of stuff I've been mentioning. And that's kind of the fun thing about newsjacking, right? It's like as I'm going through and reading all these other people's opinions, it's actually helping me and educating myself on how to run a better real estate company, because I'm staying on point with what other people are doing and what's working. And then I'm beginning to tweak it and make it even my own. So that's a good practice. It's not necessarily reading articles and just reading news. It is literally looking for opportunity inside of every single news article. Because when you're in real estate, you're in a market that shifts monthly, quarterly, yearly, all of the time. So there is opportunities in every single one of these moments. So there you go. I hope you find that extremely helpful. I really do. My goal here is to help you grow a really strong real estate business. I want to see people succeed. As a matter of fact, over the past, I think it was Thursday, I did a live stream, and then I posted a video on Friday night talking about that there was an 87% fail rate in our industry in the first 5 years. And you can go check out that video. If I can remember, I'll come back and I think it's over here. I'll throw it up over here somewhere. A link to that video, and it's literally talking about why I think that majority of agents in their first 5 years fail, and that 87% rate, and that's a really high rate. My goal is to bring that way down, because I truly believe that this is one of the most adventurous and fun industries that you can be in, that has a huge amount of upside and very, very rewarding. But it's not easy, and I think there's a lot of things that are portrayed out there that makes you think that this is just super easy. So anyway, there we go. That was a lot. I hope you guys are doing well. Sorry for all the talk, but let's get into the show now. Let's go ahead and jump in to talk about these articles and breaking down the news and seeing what's going on. So let's begin. Welcome to the Real Estate Brief. My name is Adam, and today we're cutting through all of the noise. We're going to get to the truth in what we see inside of the news. We're going to look at the data. We're going to analyze that, and I'm going to give you some of my observations and where I believe that you can absolutely find opportunity in every single news article that is out there. And that's what we're going to be looking for today. So if you're ready to gain your real estate edge, let's dive into our first story. So today we're going to start with our very first story. And this is in regards to Fortune. This is fortune.com who came up with this article. And it's titled, Trump's Housing Market Plan Contains Fatal Flaw and Multiple Obstacles, Morgan Stanley says. Now, let's just pause for just a second and remember what I talk about on this show all of the time. The goal of a headline is to trigger clicks and engagement. It spurs some form of emotion. It draws you into it to hopefully get you to stay and read it. So that is its initial job. The question then becomes is that once we read the headline and we begin to read the rest of the article, where do we land? Where do we land with inside of the information that we can then, do we agree? Do we disagree? What does it look like, right? So now, what we do note from this headline is it is addressing a housing affordability crisis, right? Because we find ourselves in this affordability gap. We find ourselves with high-priced homes, income and housing inventory, all these type of things that is causing a gap in the affordability. Now, this particular article is going to come more against this administration's and its latest moves. Now, I will say it's a classic example of what I would call industry cynicism, okay? Because they need to sell an ad, they need to sell articles, they need to get something out there. The easiest thing you can do is criticize anything that's going on, because that does increase engagement. Our question that we have to wrestle with is, what does this actually mean in regards to the real estate industry? How do we take this information, even though it's cynical? Agree or disagree, not the point. Where's the truth land? That's the argument we're going to try to make here, right? Now, we do know that at the very beginning, this article is going to be very quick to criticize the current plan as not helping as much as they possibly could. But now what we're going to notice is a little bit as we read this, and this is where I want to pay attention to any kind of cynical type of article, is do they offer an alternative solution? right? Do they propose an option to help fix the problem, or are they just being cynical, right? So is this a helpful article or not? So let's read through and let's see, right? All right, there, I've set the stage for this. All right, now it begins with, despite a flurry of aggressive policy announcements from the White House aimed at unlocking the frozen U.S. housing market, strategists and Morgan Stanley argued this month that the measures won't significantly alter the landscape for prospective homebuyers in 2026. Let me propose just a real quick question there. If something does not change something significantly, does that mean we don't do it? Okay, that's the question. If something just marginally does something and corrects something, does that mean we don't do it? And I would even, you can even make the argument, you've probably heard this argument before, is like if you're, let's say you can put this in pilot terms, you can put this in selling a ship terms, right? How much does it take to correct the position of a plane or a ship to change the course by 100 to 1,000 mile difference? Typically, one slight degree, right? One slight degree, one way or the other, can throw the plane or the ship majorly off course or on course, right? So again, I propose the question, does marginal changes mean you don't make changes at all? Now, this is not in response to political parties. This is just in general. Any president or any administration that is trying to address a situation could get it wrong and could get it right, but not doing something is not really the answer, right? It's not really the answer. And I'm going to skip on down to this section here. It says the centerpiece of the administration's strategy involves a directive for government-sponsored enterprises, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. I've been talking about this. I didn't share my screen back. To purchase $200 billion in mortgage-backed securities, MBSs. The immediate market reaction was positive, the bank noted, as mortgage spreads tightened by 15 basis points, pushing the 30-year mortgage rate below 6 for the first time in 2022. That's a good move. And remember, it might not be a huge drop in percentages, but what does it do? It helps the emotional state of the buyer and the seller and brings back confidence into the market. So regardless of the percentage change, it's a change that changes the emotions makeup of a buyer and seller. It says, however, Egan and Bacow wrote that they believe the market has already efficiently priced in Trump's intervention. While acknowledging the drop in rates is directionally positive, they argued that the sheer volume of existing low-rate mortgages renders the policy less effective than hoped. Okay, sure. What would we hope for, right? What would be the goal? Well, we want to see change, right? But the question is, do we want to see drastic change ever? Do we really want to see something go one way or the other? Because you can go so much the other direction that then something crazy happens on the other side, right? That's the problem of balancing an economy. It's very, very difficult. All right, the lock-in effect persists. The primary obstacle preventing a housing market recovery remains the lock-in effect, with Morgan Stanley noting that roughly 2/3 of all outstanding mortgages still carry an interest rate below 5. Apollo Global Management Torsten Slok, an influential and widely read Wall Street analyst, noted in early January that a whopping 40% of U.S. homes don't have a mortgage, meaning the lock-in effect is even greater than what mortgage data indicates. Okay, so let's just pause and talk about this one. So here's the thing, is they're not wrong. I mean, they're quoting good data, and they're correct to say that there is a little bit of a lock-in effect still in play. That is true. But here's the thing. Time is going to heal the wound, because if you go back right now to 2022, when people were buying homes, they were paying around 6.5 to 7 to maybe even 7.5% on interest rates. All right. So then we take in the data. How long does someone actually live in their home? Let's say they live in there for 5 years. We're getting closer and closer to where that threshold meets the changing of the market. So 2022, 2026, right? Look where we stand. So what do we see that could happen this year? Well, now if we go back to 2022, those people are not having low interest rates when they bought a house. Most of them are in the higher 6s. So to them, they're not locked in. So every month that passes and every year that goes by, that becomes less and less of an issue. And then life circumstances come into play. Things begin to change. Life changes, right? Family, kids move out, or people start having kids. The home status changes. So people still need homes. So this is the metric, right? So sure, fair point on their point. But at the same time, you don't want to drastically do anything too much. You need to do micro changes because time will heal the wound. Time's healing the wound even. All right. We're going to jump on down. Let's see right here. It says why interest and mortgage rates refuse to budge much. Even with the president's intervention pushing rates down to the high -5 range, Morgan Stanley argued current homeowners have little financial incentive to sell their homes and finance a new purchase at a higher rate. Consequently, Morgan Stanley expects the impact on housing supply to be negligible. While affordability might be improved for the marginal buyer, it won't necessarily unlock substantial additional supply to be purchased, the analyst wrote. You notice the key words here? This is why we take our time, okay? So let's just read this again. Expect the impact on housing supply to be negligible, choice of word, okay? While affordability might be improved for the marginal buyer. You know, words mean something. Words absolutely mean something. So there's an implication inside of those words, and they're implying that it's just marginal, and negligible. Let's go back to what I just said at the very beginning. Do you not do something because it's just that? Because again, when you're trying to balance the market, the worst thing you can do is cause drastic changes, right? As a matter of fact, that the administration has even made a statement that they're not going to do anything that's going to make it go drastically one way or the other. So they're actually making an argument and saying, like, we rather be very strategic. They're floating a bunch of stuff out there. What sticks, who knows? But then they analyze what then happens in the market, in the actual emotional state of the buyer and seller, and then they begin to make policies and changes in response to that. So they're being kind of smart in the way they're navigating this market. So negligible is probably the goal. It's probably exactly what they're trying to do. And if you understand economics, that's a healthy change. That's a very, very healthy change. Sorry, I didn't mean to share my screen back. Okay. Apollo's Housing Outlook, for its part, bluntly said that home buying conditions are not good, with demand slowing because of high home prices, higher mortgage rates, and declining immigration. See, there's a lot of just statements here. While housing supply is steady because the lock-in effect makes existing homeowners reluctant to sell their homes, and housing supply of new homes is rising. The bottom line is that falling demand and rising supply are putting downward pressure on home prices. There is so much to pick apart. Okay, they're not wrong. Again, they're correct, okay? There is an inflation going on. But do you know what the inflation percentage is? It's hovering right around 2%. Do you understand that historically that is a good inflation rate? That means that someone buys their house is not losing money. So it's a good investment. I'm not losing on my house to buy. Okay, that sounds good. What's happening in the job market? They don't mention. Well, income has slowly been rising, right? And also, so has the opportunity for jobs been rising. So more jobs are entering into the market. Now, is there still a gap? Yes, there is still a gap. But these micro changes are lessening that gap. There is more things taking place to lessen the gap. And you're going to see this. This is one article. We're going to get into other articles. But what they're doing is they're kind of picking apart all of the suggested things that Trump has done, right? And that administration, more in particular, has done. The lock-in effect, talking about that. We're now talking about the interest rates and the mortgages of that and what the effects of that are. Now we're going to get into the next thing, right? The institutional bans and future levers. Morgan Stanley was even more dismissive of the administrator's potential ban on large institutional investors purchasing single-family homes, concluding that such a ban would not have a significant impact on home prices. Okay, who's saying they want significant, right? Who's making that statement? They're arguing that it's not going to make a significant change. But who's saying they want the significant change? Or is a strategy, regardless of politics, is a better strategy a slow correction of the market, a more balancing of the market? Which is a better strategy that is more wise, right? Institutional investors simply do not own enough homes to sway the market. Anyway, they have largely been reducing their holdings recently. So if you don't know what this is, I did a whole video breaking down on this. I'll put that in the link if I can remember to put that up here as well, talking about what institutional buying from Wall Street and these big hedge funds companies do to markets that they decide to invest in. Now, sure, it's a fair argument. The percentage of homes that are owned by these type of entities is very low. 1 to 2% of the rental market in America is owned by these institutional firms, right? So it's a very small percentage. But that percentage is spread out of pockets of regions. Okay, so when you start going into bigger cities where these people are investing and buying up swaths of neighborhoods, it is affecting those communities. Real estate is local. So just to put a national percentage on something negates the locality of what's happening closer into home. You see the problem here is, again, to simply say, well, it's not really affecting, it's a very small percentage, negates the people that it is affecting. And trust me, it is affecting those markets. So those are in those markets know exactly what I'm talking about, right? And I have a whole video that breaks down kind of the risk of this and why private ownership of residential homes is ultimately a good thing. We're not talking about multi-complexes or anything like that. I'm talking about more specifically single family residential homes and neighborhoods. Now, you can still make the argument for the landlord ownership that someone local that owns the property does a better job maintaining the property than somebody that has no connection whatsoever to that property. They've never seen it. They just own it. Do you think they care as much about the tenant, about the property's maintenance? No, it's just part of their portfolio. If it's turning money, they could care less. So there's a whole argument for this. I'm not saying that the hedge funds are big evil, Wall Street men coming in and taking over things. That's not my argument. I just think that you need to observe what's going on and address things as they happen and use the information to be wise, right? And it says, no silver bullet. Looking ahead, the Morgan Stanley analyst outlined other levers the government could pull to lower rates farther. Now, here's a part where they begin to provide some form of solution. But is this what they're talking about enough, right? So let's read through their solutions or their suggestions to what maybe how something could help, right? All right. What they said was the GSEs could reduce the fees charged to guarantee principal and interest. Regulators also could reduce risk weights on conventional mortgages to increase bank demand. Meanwhile, new Federal Reserve Board members might move to stop mortgage bond runoff. Combined, these actions could lower mortgage rates by another 50 basis points. Morgan Stanley estimated returning to the 4% range common in the 2010s, though, would be effectively impossible through GSE's actions alone. Such a shift would require a move in Treasury rates. The report underscores that the housing market's challenges are structural. While the Federal Reserve has cut benchmark rates by 75 basis points since September, mortgage rates have only declined by a total of 20 basis points over that period. All right, here's the thing. Okay, this was their attempt to provide a solution to the scrutiny of each other option floated. The only one they're even talking about is the interest rate. They're only mentioning the interest rate. Here's the thing. That is only one factor of buying a house. And let me tell you, it is not actually the deciding factor. And we can look at history to know that's true. Because if we go back into the 80s and we see what interest rates were back then, guess what? People still bought houses. If we go back into right before the crash, people still bought houses. We go after the crash, people still bought houses. Did things change and correct? Yes. There are many other regulational type things and maneuvering you can do than just addressing the Fed rate and the interest rate. And that's the whole point. That's the whole argument of the administration currently is looking at all avenues to increase jobs, to increase production, to increase new construction, to increase income, to bring that gap closer, to increase how many jobs are out on the market, and at the same time, increase the inventory total, right? Get more homes on the market. So you don't want to have these crazy things going out one way or the other. You want a balancing. Now, I will say we are in a midterm season. So there are going to be some political, maneuvering here. And we can't lack our judgment in that and not realize that a lot of what's being done on the political side absolutely has to do with the midterm coming up. Okay. So there's a little bit of posturing to kind of get the party in a better position for votes and that kind of stuff. And we need to be wise and not fall into the traps of those games, but we need to listen to what the news is actually saying and then address that from there. Okay. So now there is a lot of information there. I get it. What I would say is focus locally. Okay. Focus on your local market and what's going on there. If these are the news headlines and these are the articles that are being ran, If you have investors and builders or people that you've worked with many times, develop some kind of newsletter talking about what the cynicism is in the media and how it relates to the market in industry, your local market, right? And what that industry looks like. So I would get into your MLS data, learn, pay attention, and see what's going on there, and draft emails and social media posts that give a true picture about what's happening in your market. And then sure, talk about different things that are happening in the news. It's good to have these conversations. Agree or disagree is fine. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with any of this. That's fine. I like discord. I like disagreement. It helps, right? It helps us all get better and learn and hear from each other. But being silent or not doing something, those are just not good options. All right. I would still absolutely, and I've talked about this many times, is I would create a cost of waiting comparison chart. So like if you were to look back past few years, if they waited, if they had not bought, now they're buying, what does that look like? And if they buy now, what does it look like in the future, and kind of work through that kind of stuff? That might be a good PDF for me to make, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I might put something like that together for you guys. All right, let's jump into article number 2. Sorry, I know that took a long time, but there was just so much in there, and that's what this show's about. It's all about kind of getting to the truth of what's going on. So let's quickly go through this one right here. So this is an article. This is actually not by AOL. I just found this on AOL.com. It's actually by Business Insider by Samuel O'Brien, written on Friday, January 23rd at 2:30 a.m. Woo, it's an early riser. Or late tonight. This is by Grant Cardone. If you don't know who he is, big investor, YouTuber. I mean, just kind of all over the place. I guarantee you know who this guy is. There's things I agree with him, things I don't agree with him, whatever. But you know, he does tend to have a good channel and talk about good stuff. But anyway, in this article here, this story is going to highlight some of his own perspectives about what's going on in the market and a shift in the supply market and what that kind of looks like. And he mentions some stuff about federal land, how that could actually help and solve the inventory crisis. So there's a lot inside of this article. So let's just quickly kind of go through this article here. Grant Cardone is bullish on the housing market as the industry enters a new year. He thinks the Trump administration will do more to jumpstart the market. So he's making a perspective here. His perspective is that since Trump is making and floating all of these things, he's actively looking at the market and trying to make corrections. And that's a good thing. Regardless of administration, that's a good thing. The housing market affects so many things inside of an economy. And it doesn't make any sense not to look at it and then address the issues we find, right? We need to be doing that. Cardone said that talks with White House insiders point to a few things the administration could do next. Grant Cardone thinks the Trump administration is gearing up to do more to stimulate the U.S. housing market. Yes, he's a longtime real estate investor. He's bullish on the market. He says as home prices remain high. It says Cardone told Business Insider that he recently spoke with administration insiders about what he thinks can still be done to open the market. So he's having a conversation with President Trump and his administration, apparently, and I don't know if it's specifically Trump, but somebody in his administration. It says President Trump has made affordability a primary focus in 2026 ahead of the midterm elections. And in his address at the World Economic Forum in Davos this week, he discussed high housing costs as well as interest rates, stating that the goal of home ownership is out of reach for many Americans. So making a statement of the truth here so far. Trump so far has focused on mortgage rates and housing availability, pitching plans to have, we talked about this, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac load up on mortgage bonds while also banning institutional investors from buying single-family homes. So he's basically called upon Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to buy billions of dollars of loans off of banks to free up more cash into the market to help them invest and put back into the market for private owners to then do so, right? That's the whole goal here. Cardone thinks Trump could address issues in the tax code to make the market easier to navigate. So going back to what we talked about in the previous article, are there other things that can be done? We're getting ready to get into one here because what he's going to suggest is a tax. Think about this, is every dollar you save is a dollar earned. What does that mean? That means your income goes up. You have more funds to then invest or put somewhere else, right? So that's how this works. So you can talk about interest rates all day long. Okay, you can make that one point of the argument. But the fact that we're talking about multiple fronts here that can correct the market is what I would call a good idea. That's a good idea. So he's going to get into another proposed idea, one of many to talk about that we need to be talking about and seeing how this benefits, right? He predicts that the White House will adjust capital gains taxes for home sales to make it less prohibitive to sell a property that has appreciated in value. This is a smart move, okay? Because if you go back to the pre-pandemic era and you look at what inflation has done over the past few years, it's massive amount of inflation, right? These homes that they bought, if you bought a house in 2018 or 2019, you're sitting really pretty on a lot of equity right now. And if you were to sell that property, you're going to pay capital gains on that if you didn't roll it back into other like kind of properties, right? So here's an idea. Here is another idea. It says currently homeowners can exclude $500,000 in capital gains for married filers or $250,000 for single filers when they sell their home. Cardone expects the caps to be raised, which would make the tax bill much less burdensome and potentially bring more homes to market. Now, given this isn't for everybody. Some people are sitting here listening like, well, I don't even have that much house or whatever. But still, it's addressing a percentage of the market, right? It's still addressing an issue that we can control. Other commentators have flagged this as a simple fix to the market that can be done with relative ease. Mark Zandi, the top economist at Moody's Analytics, said last year that caps should be raised to $500,000 for single filers and $1 million for joint filers. The other potential change Trump could make would allow more people to invest in real estate, so the investment would go up. So if you make a change like this, you can see why at the same time banning large hedge funds from going in it, that's how you can balance the two. By banning that, you don't pour a bunch of people into hedge funds with their extra money to then buy up the residential homes. You keep it into the private sector that way. So these two kind of correlate a little bit. I think he's going to come out and say, hey, I want to extend that bonus depreciation that was approved in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Cardone said he's going to extend it to single family homes. So that's another one that could happen, right? That's what he's thinking. So he's saying he's in talks with some of the administration. So we'll see what happens. And we're paying really close attention about what this is, what this actually comes about, right? Bonus depreciation is a mechanism that allows investors to deduct the cost of a property from their taxes. The landmark tax and spending bill signed into law last year allows investors to deduct 100% of qualified investment properties immediately. When I buy these big assets, I get to write them off basically in year one. And when you buy a single family home, you write it off over 27 years. You get a tax loss spread over the time. So this is tax savings. See what this does? More money in your pocket. These are still those things you can do without even worrying about interest rate. President Trump pledged to put an end to Joe Biden's inflation and affordability crisis. Yeah, we got political pandering. You get the point. You get the point. So there, inside of this, there's many proposed ideas that even Cardone is bringing to the table. Hopefully they're listening to these type of things. It does seem like the administration is going out and listening to what economists are saying, because they've thrown out, like, if you use this as an example, they threw out a 50-year mortgage for a little while, right? They floated that out there, and that met with major opposition. I have a whole video about what I think about the 50-year mortgage as well, and I don't like it. I think it puts people in debt and doesn't build as much equity, and it causes major problems long term, but that's my opinion. So they floated that out. Economists pushed back, and he took it off the table. Okay, so that's what's happening here. So let's not be naive to think that everything that's been floated is going to happen. It's a test. It's trying to figure out what's going to happen here. So a lot's been proposed. We're watching and paying attention to what's actually going to happen, and we're being observant of those type of things, right? So what would I do? What would I do if I was you guys? Where is the opportunity inside of this, all these changes? Well, if you represent a builder, investors, those type of things, paying attention to what's happening on this side, the tax code and capital gains, and being aware of that, when those things come into law, those are the people you want to be calling. That's the opportunity there, right? So when you start looking at in your market, and I'd pull up PVA, records and stuff like that to see who owns properties. And if you find out the capital gain's been raised, or there's different tax incentives to do this, or write-offs that's coming down the line, or whatever it may be, those are the calls I'll be making. That's the opportunity that we're beginning to see maybe take shape here. So if you work with those type of clients and that's your demographic, here is an opportunity for you guys to get in front of them and begin talking about this. You could begin now. You could begin talking about it now with them, because even though it's not law right now, it gives you a touch point, and it shows those people you work for that you are in tune with what possibly might be coming down the line that maybe they're not even aware of just yet, right? So I think there's an opportunity here to be able to take advantage of this. So be looking for those. Be looking for the opportunity inside of articles like this, because if this happens, that's where we're going to end up. Okay. I got one more article about the economy, and then we'll be shifting gears just a little bit. This one is, let's see, this is by thestreet.com. but it's mainly about Zillow and some of their predictions. And Zillow is predicting some surprising real estate mortgage changes that might be coming to our market and that kind of stuff. And there's some saying we just need to kind of work through here. But it kind of goes along with our conversation because there's other things changing inside of the market outside of just interest rates and what Trump is doing in his administration. There's other things in play here as well. So what you're going to see in this article, okay, you're going to see that Zillow is signaling somewhat of a shift in how buyers in general will interact with mortgages and mainly more specifically online. Now, the headline here is going to use the word, I think it uses the word surprising. Is that the word it's in here? No, it's just saying it predicts, but somewhere it says it's a surprising statement, which, is to grab you like, oh, we're surprised. But the reality is it's more about integrating technology and finance that is trying to merge those two industries together. And the argument is that the algorithms and technology and what you see online in these portals are going to be doing more of acquiring information to make a decision on people's financial state. And sure, I think there's an element there. I think there's an element where the lending industry is going to be more online. There's an opportunity there, but I don't think it's going to replace the person. And that's the thing. I think we make the same argument about real estate agents. It's like technology can only go so far. It can't replace the person. But now there's other significant points of interest in this article. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So like I said, this is The Street, and it says Zillow predicts major mortgage change for U.S. housing market. The real estate technology company sees a big shift for home buyers and owners coming soon. So this is by Jeffrey Quiggle, reviewed by Celine Provini. So there you go. The key points in this article goes out from the very beginning right here. It says a significant 82% of Americans say housing costs are an issue in their area. Yep, there's no question about it. We got affordability gap here and low inventory. All right, so that's happening. Zillow forecasts greater affordability and slow home price growth in 2026. And then he says mortgage rates, income growth, and moderate home values are expected to ease affordability pressures. So I would agree with all these type of things. So this is where Zillow's economists are kind of right on point, right? So it says more than 4 in 5 Americans, 82%, say that the cost of housing is an issue in their own city or county based on Morning Consult survey commissioned by the National Association of Home Builders, NAHB. Owners, buyers, and sellers of homes may be surprised by a new housing market report released by real estate technology company Zillow that predicts a big change in affordability coming for the remainder of the current year. Home buying is becoming more affordable in more cities, with Zillow forecasting that 20 of the 50 largest U.S. metros will be affordable to buy in the end of 2026, and most since 2022. Is this not counteracting the very first article we went through, right? So, and the difference here, the major difference is this is not a cynical opinion piece. They're actually going to be bringing data. So this is a big difference. It says federal housing programs generally consider a home affordable when a household spends no more than 30% of its income on housing costs, okay? We've heard this many times in our industry that basically lenders look for your income and they want to finance you around 30% of your income for the housing cost. And the housing cost factors in your cost of living, insurance, property taxes, and payment, right? So they're looking at it, that 30% metric. Okay, so that's usually your basic point. Now, that's not really ironclad, but even financial planners would tell you if you're looking to buy a house, that's a safe zone. If you can get lower than that, great. If it's a little higher, you can still buy, but there's a little bit more risk there. You're a little more house poor, right? All right. It says, according to this metric, families that pay more are considered to be cost burdened, and those that pay more than half of their incomes are considered severely cost burdened. Okay, that's the difference there. It says Zillow anticipates that modest home price gains, declining mortgage rates, and higher household incomes will together help make housing more affordable across the country over the coming year. This is what a small wins looks like. Okay, let's jump on down. So, and I think somewhere in here, yeah, I thought it said a percentage of homes. I'm not seeing it. I think it was 32%. The debt to income ratio of a home was like 32%, and now it's down. It might be down here. Zillow explains how home affordability trends. In the 5 years leading up to the COVID pandemic, a standard U.S. home factoring in taxes, insurance, and upkeep typically has consumed about 22.5% to 26.5% of the median household income based on a 20% down payment. So if we go back to pre-pandemic era, okay, we are looking at 22 to 26 below that 30% margin. So really good affordability, right? Everything looked good at that point. We all know that. Once prices surged beginning in 2020 and mortgage rates jumped in 2022, affordability deteriorated quickly. By October 2023, conditions hit a record low. The monthly payment on a typical home demanded 38.2% of median income. So see, now we're getting up there. So now the cost of buying a house, the average selling price, was above what other people would advise or even banks would like to lend, and above that percentage. So that's a problem. At that point, only 7 of the 50 largest metro areas still offered homes that a median income buyer could reasonably afford. Yeah, here it is. At the national level, a mortgage payment now takes 32.6%. Okay, so we've now dropped from 38 down to 32. So whatever's happened has brought that number closer and closer down to the affordability metric that we're looking for, that 30%, right? So housing income, already the best affordability seen nationwide since August of 2022. That's on track to improve to 31.8 by the end of the year. So we're heading down closer to that 30% benchmark, okay? Mortgage costs have come down, but they continue to put pressure on household finances. Even with monthly payments now $177 below their October 2023 high, they still consume 32.6% of the typical household's income nationwide. Conditions are poised to get better without a major drop in prices. Zillow projects home values to grow 1.9%, so we're close to that 2%. That's what I'm saying. Like, inflation is right around the 2% mark, right? And to climb to 41 of the 50 largest metro areas. All right, so there we go. Zillow's forecast involves housing market assumptions. Mortgage rates have slipped to around 6, which is also where Zillow anticipates they will settle by year end. Home prices are projected to rise about 2, bringing the typical U.S. home value to about that price, $365,000, $795,000, above 2025 levels. Realtor.com forecasts a 3.6 increase in household income this year. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this and just kind of post and make some posts out of this. I think this is kind of a helpful little thing. The forecast assumes buyers make a 20% down payment, which remains a significant barrier for many households. Most people don't have that kind of cash, okay? Most of them don't. With the current national median home value at $359,000, a 20% down payment comes at roughly $71,000. How many of you guys have an extra $71,000 or $72,000 just sitting around you can throw on a down payment, right? Now, if you're wanting to, downsize or move up and sell your house, chances are you might actually have that cash because of the equity you have in your home to put that in it, and maybe even more. And then that's where the math comes in, because maybe the math where I sell my house, I want to downsize, I had this huge amount of equity, and I'm going to then roll that over to the next property, that paying a higher interest rate, but yet I bought it way down, so my payment's way lower, and I can throw more equity into it because I have a lower payment, right? So I'm getting quicker out of debt, and that percentage doesn't make much of a difference. So you can do the math and figure out that moment. And if you do, then you know who you target as a seller to go out and get listings, right? That's the math. Math doesn't lie, guys. Math does not lie. At December's average mortgage rate of 6.2 let's jump. Zillow list home value findings. There's a lot of information there. You guys get the idea here that we're talking about. You've got major contrasting articles here. We went from a cynical view of an opinion piece to another opinion piece, give an alternate opinion about that, saying how these micro changes could actually move the needle. And now we ended up with a lot of information in regards to data and where we are heading in as a market, right? And what we do know is these micro small changes, when you start looking at the data, we start looking at these small percentage changes, we're doing what we wanted to do as an economy, right? Slow changes, micro changes, bring balance back, keeps the emotion at bay, and keeps the reality in perspective. And that's what we want. We don't want emotions one way or the other. We want a nice balanced market that we can navigate. And as agents, especially as real estate agents, we want to be able to go to our clients and tell them exactly what's happening. We need to be able to communicate these things to them, right? So what would I take from this article? Well, I would go back and I would talk to your preferred lenders. I would get from them what they're offering, what kind of incentives, what their interest rates are, what kind of programs they have, what kind of grants do they offer. I would then take that information, draft newsletters, social media posts, whatever, to my active buyer pool or anybody that's on the fence. I would develop a cost of waiting sheet. We talked about that earlier. I would have that ready to go. I probably need to do an article you guys can download for that as well. I would create a human benefit, like in other words, human versus technology, and like the importance of what you do, and more of just a dialogue with yourself is like, what do I bring to the table that technology and the algorithms cannot do? What differentiates me between what they can find online and how I can deliver the information? And think video, think about getting in front of people and talking about the market and your investors. Yeah, sure. You can go online and Google it. You go to ChatGPT and type in prompts and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't replace the human element. And guess what? You're human. Be a human in front of people and get this information out verbally, right? Communicate with them. All right. And I would go back and I would also analyze every single technology profile you have out there on Zillow, Trulia, and Realtor.com and update that and fluff that up, make sure everything's on point there, right? Okay. Let's jump into another article. I got two more, guys. Just bear with me. It snowed and iced in. Hopefully you guys are doing well and staying warm. I'll pause here. If you're finding any kind of value inside of what I'm talking about here, would you consider subscribing, following, all those things? I would greatly appreciate that. So thank you. All right. This next article is by Real Estate News, and it's talking about NAR, National Association of Realtors. And it begins with NAR shouldn't be competing with members. Hobby Hanna says. This is Howard Hanna's CEO. He's going to weigh in on NAR's evolving role and explains why he believes control over listing distribution will define the industry's next phase. Okay. Now, there's kind of a lot going on here. This article here is going to dive into some of this internal friction that we begin to see in regards to NAR and competing with what brokerages do as far as on listings, off listings, and all that stuff, all this internal things. So if you're a realtor, you hopefully kind of know a lot of this internal control that's kind of come down. This is not a bash against National Association of Realtors. It's almost like this article is more of like, hey, NAR, wake up and remember what you're there for and what you're not there for. And that's kind of what this article is going to get to. So that's where he's going to have his opinion, right? He's going to kind of push back a little bit and start this kind of discussion. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to have this discussion here as well, because I think there's some value in here for us to be just aware about what is NAR doing? What are their roles? What should they be doing? And what does this look like, right? All right. So what we're going to see here is very beginning is, should they provide, what should NAR be providing as a trade association? The key points in this article, it says Howard Hobby Hanna IV argues that NAR should refocus on advocacy and governance and claims the trade association has overreached by competing with its members and imposing costly mandates. I'm going to switch this song. Sorry, guys. The background song music was just annoying me. Howard Hanna's president and CEO expects tight inventory to continue driving modest price growth in 2026, with interest rates playing a key role in unlocking demand. The indie leader also suggests that brokerages will increasingly differentiate themselves by how they distribute and market listings, signaling a shift where power resides in the transaction. So that's the key points that we're talking about here. Real quick, as residential real estate continues grappling with regulatory change, inventory constraints, and shifting power dynamics, Howard Hanna CEO Howard Hobby Hanna IV believes the industry's next phase will be focused on who controls data, listings, and consumer relationships. So just real quick, what he's referencing, if you're not aware at all about all this power dynamics and what's kind of shifting, there's a lot going on. So you've had, Redfin and Rocket Mortgage do some merging. You've had Compass acquiring Anywhere, which owns the multiple brands like Century 21, Coldwell Banker, ERA, Cochrane, and other ones, Better Homes and Gardens, those type of franchises. And there's major shifting going on and power at play on whose role is what. Zillow putting, requirements that if a brokerage decides to keep their listing private for so many days, that they will not allow then that property to market on their portal. So there's these internal issues going on, and NAR has kind of put all kinds of mandates in regards to how those processes work. So what he's going to be talking about here is pushing back a little bit, is like, hey, be aware about what your role really is and where us as realtors could really benefit for your advocacy and your governance more than your control. Okay. Excuse me. All right. So what's your general sense of where NAR stands now and where it's heading? Okay. He says, my opinion on NAR is that it should focus on advocacy for the housing industry. That's what it was created to do, but it shouldn't be competing with its members for goods, products, and services. Let the brokers and the companies that do that work do it. Don't have a trade association do that. So there's his argument, right? That's his opinion. He doesn't think that products and goods and all that kind of stuff is really what they're there for. His argument is that they're there for advocacy and governance, advocating for good home ownership and realtors to have the code of ethics, right? And enforce those things to help keep our industry and our standards high, So as salespeople, we have integrity. Okay. So that's kind of his argument here. I believe they should look at their governance and the mistakes they've made. They should get out of telling people how to operate a business. Okay. There's a lot of pushback. When you start talking about like basically capitalism and free trade and stuff like that, NAR has a tendency to kind of put pressure on brokerages and how they navigate things. And to quite frankly, can sometimes stymie creativity and growth, right? It should go as far as giving some more choice, not mandating that if a broker isn't a member or everybody in your company isn't a member, that others can't be a member. I just think they've many times caused more harm than good. So most MLSs and most associations require, and I think all of them do, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I think most of them require that if the broker is a member of National Association of Realtors, every agent of that broker in that brokerage has to be as well. I know in our area that is absolutely the case. Good, bad, indifferent. Your opinion, let me know in the chat if you agree or disagree with that. That's his opinion. That's not against the people that volunteer. So he's not saying the people that are volunteer for NAR or serve on panels and boards. That's not his argument, right? So just make that very clear. He's not talking about realtors in general. I just think there's been a history of some real mistakes that have been against the independent creative broker. And we get dragged in with some of the decisions they make. Lawsuits, right? I think NAR is going to have to change. I don't think their strategic plan is enough. I even think their strategic plan coming out and saying they're going to offer technology and marketing and website services for agents, that's what we as brokers already do. So here's the thing. I would actually agree very full-heartedly with this. There is an element, sure, you can provide some technology, that kind of stuff, but should that be your focus? Because in reality, a good broker is going to provide technology and stuff for their agents to succeed. That's what their goal is. Their goal is to support the agents' businesses and help them flourish through technology, training, and equipping them. So his argument is like, well, why is NAR trying to spend all of our money on all this technology and then forcing us to use that technology inside of their systems, right? That's not necessarily helping us be creative and be independent brokerages to be able to navigate this. It almost brings everybody down to the same playing field, and then the creativity is then squandered with it. So it's a fair argument. It's a very fair argument. You've talked about how the importance of staying disciplined with M&As. I'm going to skip that one. He talks about what are your expectations for 2026, both for your brokerage footprint. He says, I think we'll see sale prices to increase. We're forecasting probably across most of our footprint, maybe another 3 to 6% in average sales price. We talked about the market. Let's skip on down. Let's see. You've previously championed the theme of taking more control over listings. You also mentioned that you're working on something around listing and distribution. Can you expand on that? Now, this is what's happening in the market. A lot of these bigger brokerages that have a lot of agents are creating their own kind of platforms for listings and distributions and that kind of stuff. This is where technology is ramping up in the internal aspect outside of NAR and everything else. And that is a big thing. Sorry, I gotta re-trigger TikTok here to stay live. They want to make sure I'm still here. So this is a big conversation that's happening, right? So now what he says is, I'm not talking about pocket and exclusive listings. I'm talking about old-fashioned marketers who create a wave of energy that services the client base. Buyers and buyer agents sign a contract with a broker to help them find a home, but there's value in knowing about homes quicker in a neighborhood, whether it's Chicago, Cleveland, or Pittsburgh. There's value in the knowledge of the agent and the brokerage firm, not just selling a lead. When you look at a lot of the reports recently with Zillow and you look at those arguments, part of what's changing is that listing brokerage firms are going to have to create the ability to distribute their inventory. In other words, take the control away from any portals and be more responsible in marketing our own properties. And what does that look like going forward? He said, I hate to use the word control because that's not what I'm talking about, but the ability for the listing agent to sit at the kitchen table and say, here's my marketing strategy, and believe that strategy maximizes getting their home sold, not just because it's on Zillow or Realtor.com. In other words, helping agents spur creativity in the way they market, right? The way they market their property, not because Realtor.com and Zillow and even NAR is telling us that this is how we are to do it, but allowing us to have creativity in the way we market our properties. Now, we adhere to the code of ethics with the National Association of Realtors, and we should absolutely do those. But at the same time, does that overbearing limit our creativity to be able to market a property to the benefit of the seller and ultimately the consumer, which is what we're hired to do? So this is the whole balancing act. This is the whole argument, right? All right. It says a big change is coming in the next quarter where that sharing of information, that distribution, that ability for clients to find something first is going to change how the process works. It's going to benefit the listing brokerage, and it's going to cause listing firms to be even more at the center of the transaction in a tight inventory market. We're focused on how we do that, servicing clients and customers while cooperating with others, but having a true come-to-market strategy that maximizes price, minimizes days on market, gets homes sold faster to a broader audience, and supports both in sellers and buyers. Do you realize what he just said there? Let me just requote this. He literally summarized the entire motive behind an agent when they go to get a listing, right? Listen to this. What are we to do when we go get a listing, right? He says it so clearly. Having a true come-to-market strategy that what? Maximizes the price, minimizes the days on the market, gets homes sold faster to a broader audience, and supports both sellers and buyers. That's a powerful, impactful statement. You, agent that's listening, that is what you're to do. That is the goal. The question then becomes, is these regulations, these rules that certain entities, say National Association of Realtors, say Zillow, Realtor.com, anybody that forces you to do the way they want to do things, the argument is, does it limit you as the creative individual, the creative listing agent, to do those things better? Let me know in the comments your opinion on that. I'm not giving my opinion. I don't know. I think we got to let time and work through this. I think there's benefits to National Association of Realtors. I absolutely do. Is there certain things that they need to focus more on? 100%. Their job should be advocacy and governance and helping us to be protecting the consumer and helping us be, great ethical salespeople, providing MLS and some of those type of things. Those are all great. But should they be coming in and suppressing our creativity when it comes to marketing the property when we are still adhering to all of the code of ethics and operating with integrity, and we're still doing the things that they're there for, right? This is the argument. This is where it is. Tracy, yes, absolutely. Tracy agrees. That's the thing, right? I mean, we want to, I'm going to highlight you up there, Tracy. Thank you for saying that. Absolutely. That's so true. That's what we want to see, right? That's what they're there for. And then he ends with this. There are ways using technology, market knowledge, and local realtors who know their consumers to make that difference. What a great statement. What a great observation. I like the opinion piece. Having these conversations is good. We are not bashing National Association of Realtors. I think they do a lot of good. I think they're very important. Matter of fact, they are. When you start talking about RPAC and what they do on the government side and helping pass regulation that protects the consumer, there are countless of stories of them being very successful on that front. They are also very good at helping us to elevate our standards of practice above the typical sales industry. That's all very good things that I can get behind and champion and say that is excellent. But when they start coming up with technology and they start suggesting the way we do certain marketing tactics and the way we interact with our listings and what that looks like, that's where it becomes more of a police force than an advocacy group, right? And that's where they can cross the line. And I think a lot of the things we've been drug into over the past few years is coming because of that initiative. So NAR, if you're listening, take a step back and remember, go back to your roots about what you were founded for. Read the code of ethics and stay in that lane. And you will find that realtors, real estate agents will come flocking back as members because they want to be a part of you that is going to protect them and elevate them and give them the resources that they cannot get anywhere else. Anywhere else. We're not talking about new technology, right? We're not talking about, control. We're talking about ultimate support here. We're talking about supporting your realtors, the people, your members, with advocacy and governance and elevating our professionalism, those type of things. That's what we're talking about. That's what we want to see. So I would agree with his opinion piece to some fronts, and I think he was very gracious. We're not blaming members. We're not blaming board members or people that step up and serve. I think that is all good. I think that's needed. We need people doing that. But at the same time, we got to look back at the history and say, they messed up some, right? They've messed up some. Yes. Tracy, again, you're right on. Tracy says the support is why we are members. Yep. I 100% agree. If you were to sit here and even have that whole conversation about why do agents associate with brokers, right? And why do they leave brokerages? Well, they associate with the brokerage because they're looking for the support they need to grow a strong real estate business, their business, right? They are the CEO. Why do they leave? It's when brokers confuse what they're there for. When the brokers start seeing themselves as a boss and a ruler and everything else, that their initiatives are better, and they limit the creativity of their own agents and don't help and support them, guess what? Agents leave. Take note, NAR. Take note. Why are, and you need to ask yourself that, why are realtors? Why do they every single year? Right now, is the argument, is the only thing you have to hold them there is the MLS? If that's the only reason you're holding them there, then something's missing. So anyway, it sounds like I'm against NAR. I'm actually not. I just want them to, I think they're really good. I think they do a lot of good things. I just think there's an opportunity here that they're really wanting to change. So hopefully they're listening to what he's saying and other people are saying. And, we do need to keep having this conversation. I think it's good. All right. There's my soapbox. I did not mean to go on a soapbox. But all right, that was good. So, actually, let me give you some. I'll finish before I get to the next article here. Actually, let me summarize just a couple things as far as like what I would do as actionable items and some observations and some takeaways for you guys. Right? I would go through and I would if you've never been involved with NAR and you would agree with kind of what I was saying here, do understand that it's not about leaving an organization, right? It's not about rejecting that organization. It's about, if you agree with what I was saying and what this guy was saying, then volunteering and serving that organization is where the change can come from. Because remember, it's governed by its members and its board members and committees and all that kind of stuff. So you want to see change, and we got to step up and serve, right? That's the goal here. We need to get involved, speak up, and speak truth into these organizations and help bring focus back. So consider doing that. I'm not a big advocate that you dedicate every single part of your life. I think there are bigger priorities that you need to make sure that you do. But it is important to serve. I've been a president of association. I've served on many committees, and I will say I've learned a lot by doing that. I've learned a whole lot that has helped me be an agent in the communities that I serve and the agents that I also serve. So it is a good practice. So I will say that. So consider doing something like that. I would definitely do that. So anyway, all right, let's get into this final article, guys, and we will wrap up. I'm already running long. So this is the very last article here, and this is just we're shifting gears into kind of we're shifting from global into one state, and that's California. So bear with me. We're going to go into California here. There's an article by Inman, and it's basically what you should know about California's new listing photo law. Now, we're bringing point to this, okay? Because sometimes, and it definitely trends to be this way, is that California, New York, and other things like that, it tends to be like a bellwether type of markets that trickles down into the country elsewhere, right? That's kind of how it works. Like it, dislike it, whatever. That's typically how it works. So when we see California, New York, and laws and changes like that, we read them. Sometimes we'll see them, sometimes we won't. But here's where this one kind of talks about. This is kind of getting into like what a new law that they're beginning to pass. Actually, I think they already passed this. It's regarding listing photos, the rights of it, and transparency of photos, and kind of what this means as far as like what would be considered misrepresentation of a property using listing photos. And that's where we're going to have this conversation, because it's so easy as technology gets better and better and AI is integrated more and more that we can find ourselves accidentally falling into a trap where we misrepresent properties because of the photo enhancements. And as agents, we are ultimately responsible for the photos that we take or hire others to take for us that then are posted online. And we have to be very careful not to deceive or mislead the consumer, regardless if it's a law or not, right? Now, what we're talking about here is California has passed such a law. But what we're talking about in general, since most states do not have this law, could happen though. My guess, I truly think it's going to happen. I think that's why I'm going to feature this one. I think it's going to trickle down. It's going to be what's happening. So here, anyway, let's just get into this article here. It says a new California law changes what agents must disclose when doctoring listing photos. America Foy breaks down. Boy, is that the person? Sorry, let me see. Is that the person? Yeah, America Foy. That's who wrote this article. America Foy. Foy breaks down what you can and can't do and the consequences for not disclosing. Yeah. Tracy. Yeah. So yeah, she goes, I hate AI staging and listing photos. So yeah, I think there's a good way to use it and there's a wrong way to use it. I think you could fall into the trap where you do so much AI staging that you're trying to just make the whole house look good. I think the use case for any kind of staging in general is when you have a space that the consumer can't really understand how to lay it out. That helps bring visualization to the space. Like think of a living room area that has multiple egress and ingress doors in it. A lot of people struggle. They don't have any kind of design. They struggle with like, where could I put the couch? Where could I put this? So that's where AI staging can come into play. Here's the thing though, and this is where I'd be very careful, is don't just edit that photo and then that's your photo of the living room. Make sure you have that exact same photo unedited. And then what we're gonna get into this article, and this is another advice I would give you, is I would say, is if you are going to have a photo that travels with that property, right? When it's syndicated out to all the portals out there, if you're gonna have that photo, what I would then do is maybe on text in the small bottom or the corner, or a banner. We used to do banners actually. This is kind of fun. This is a bunny trail. But back in the day when we had magazines, you would have like a banner, reds or blacks in the corners of your photos, and it would say something about like new listing, that kind of stuff. And on the next print, you'd take that banner off, that kind of thing. Let me know if you're in this era if you're licensed during the era of magazines. You might be in an era that still has magazines. Anyway, what about something like that, right? You can even say AI staged or AI staging to give you perspective or something like that. Some kind of disclaimer to the consumer, I think is a good practice. I think that's just a good practice, to be honest. I really do. But Tracy, I agree. I think AI and staging is being overdone. I think it has a use case. I think it's got a strategic use case, but it needs to be used correctly. Just like any tool and system, you can't just put all your eggs in one basket. All right. Okay, so let's get into this article. What's going on here? Being catfished by photos is a disappointing to say the least. The time and energy and space in your head that you've invested into property. Imagine yourself there, calculating the lifestyle fit, envisioning. Oops, sorry, share my screen. Envisioning renovations all evaporate the moment you walk through the door and realize the listing photos bear no resemblance to reality. That's horrible, guys. That's horrible. Like that, to be honest, regardless of a law, I don't care. I think if you are literally doing what they just said, you are 100% misrepresenting that property, and I think you're going to get into trouble. I would never, ever, ever advise or do that. I would never do that. AI tools removed utility poles, and this is true. Brightened skies, added grass, staged entire homes. The line between enhanced and deceived blurred. And buyers showed up expecting the MLS pictures, only to find the harsh reality. Some checks were put in place early on. MLS requirements to disclose virtually staged homes have been around for a while, but California has decided it has had enough. It's probably gotten crazy out of control, guys. It's probably ran rampant. Ooh, my coffee is cold. Ugh. I don't mind like iced coffee with like some flavor in it, but ooh, anybody else? I do not like cold coffee. I'm putting that over here because I'll by habit drink it, and I'm moving my water in. Sorry. Oh man, that was bitter. Sorry. All right. But this is very true, right? I mean, we see this all the time. Like, and I will say this, like utility poles and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's an element. Like, if you're going to do that, if you're going to alter and remove clutter, and you're going to remove utility poles and stuff, that when the person gets there, that they can clearly see that there's a utility pole blocking the house, I wouldn't remove that. I wouldn't remove it. If you want to remove clutter, that's fine. But again, I would probably say clutter been removed, clutter still present, or I'd have some kind of disclaimer somewhere, right? But now if the clutter is being removed by the owners, see, that's what the use case to me is. Like if the owner is moving out and they just haven't got all their stuff out and it's going to be vacant, that's an argument to be had. I would still take a photo of the stuff in there and then have the AI edit out the stuff and have both. That way you're ready, so you don't have to go back and hire the photographer to go back and do the photo, right? That's a good use case, right? That's a good, smart use case. You're just planning ahead and saving your money. All right. What changed? California's Assembly Bill 723. Starting January 1st of 2026, California's new Assembly Bill AB 723 requires real estate professionals to disclose when property listing images have been digitally altered and provide access to unaltered versions. The statute is brief. It's only 580 words, but clear and impactful. The California Department of Real Estate has enforcement mechanisms in place with real teeth. These include regulatory discipline against brokers and salespersons, civil liability exposure for agents and their firms, and in cases of willful violation, criminal charges. The principle is ancient and unyielding. Ignorantia legis ignorance of the law is not an excuse. It's Latin. It's like getting confused. First I thought I was reading somebody's name. Yeah, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. Hey, Cassie, thank you so much for the rose. Appreciate that. Thank you. That's on TikTok, guys, for those who are watching. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Cassie. What you can't do. Real estate brokers, salespersons, and anyone acting on their behalf must disclose when images are digitally altered and provide access to unaltered versions via link, URL, or QR code. So they got some protective measures in there. Disclosures must be reasonably conspicuous and located on or adjacent to the altered image. So use those captions or get comfortable with adding text to photos, just like I was saying, right? That's the goal. On websites that agents control, original images must be posted directly or linked. This requirement applies across all platforms, and I mean all of them. MLSs, our personal websites, socials, portals, and virtual tours. If a digitally altered image appears anywhere, a buyer might see it before making an offer. Disclosure is required. That's, again, I don't disagree with this. I think this is good transparency for our industry. And again, these are one of those things that elevate our professionalism. I wouldn't say this is in National Association of Realtors, even if they adopted a policy like this, is coming down on the government side to control what agents do in their creativity. I think this would be bringing balance and integrity back to the market, right? This would fall into the governance stage that would make sense. It says there's no carve out for Instagram, no exemption for Facebook, no everyone does it, right? The language is intentionally open to interpretation because the legislature understood that buyers research properties everywhere and altered images on any platform can influence their decision to make an offer. In other words, this goes everywhere. Everywhere. All right. It says what you can do. So here is what are you allowed in response to this? So you're in California watching and this is what you're dealing with. Let me know in the comments if you're there, and that'd be awesome. Let me check if somebody's here on the Rumble side of things. No one's asked anything. Okay. So what you can do, routine professional adjustments, lighting, sharpening, white balance, color corrections, straightening, cropping, and exposure do not require disclosure if they don't change the property's depiction. The distinction is simple. Does the edit make the property appear different from how it actually is? White balance, exposure, and cropping do not. Okay. So here's the thing. On my side of it, I understand the real estate photography industry really, really well. And there is the process of multi-layering photos. You'll go in and you'll do what's called multi-bracketed photos. You'll take a series of 7 to 8 photos. Each photo you take, and it's in succession. You don't move the camera. It's just, right? Each one of those photos that the camera takes is at a different exposure level from light all the way to dark. All right. And then they take that and they layer that to give complete perfect exposure. And that's how you get exposure of every room, every crevice, and outside the windows is in clarity. That is not what they're talking about here. That is allowed because what you're doing is you're capturing the property as the eye would see it, right? Depending on the lighting conditions. Like if I was to go in and the room was dark, I would see it as a dark photo. If I was to go in and the lights are all on, it would be a light photo. When I'm sitting in my house and I have my windows open, guess what? I can see my house and I can see outside and I can see the trees. That is not changing the depiction of what that house looks like. It's bringing clarity to it. But if you were to go in there and stage that property or remove clutter that's going to be with that property when the person buys the home, that kind of stuff, telephone poles, all that would require disclosure, right? And it says the consequences, the DRE can pursue disciplinary action for violations, but civil liability poses the greater risk. If a buyer decides to make an offer, some foreign nationals, investors, or relocation buyers still don't physically inspect the properties based on undisclosed altered photos and the property doesn't match, that buyer has a misrepresentation claim. Woo-hoo-hoo, that's big. Discovery questions are straightforward. Did you alter the image? So this is what's going to happen. So let's just say sight unseen, right? I did this. I had these photos edited, whatever. They're going to ask, discovery is this. Did you alter the images? Yeah. Was disclosure made? Did the buyer see unaltered versions? No. Okay. Busted. Right? We thought the edits were acceptable. Is not a legal defense, right? It's not a legal defense. Oh my gosh. There you go. Did I lose my stream? Let me see something real quick, guys. Let me know if I lost my stream. Kind of looking like I did. I'm almost done anyway. Let me see. Let me open up this real quick and just see. If you're still here in the chat, let me know. Looks like my stream went down. Let's see. Could be internet related. Or is it still live? Down. Let's see. Oh, no, I'm still live. Okay. I'm good. I think it's just the chat. Nope. Okay. I got a big notification that it was over. Thanks, Tracy. Appreciate that. It's probably winter related that my streaming software did something. You can see. That's good. Very good. Thanks, Tracy. Appreciate that greatly. All right. That's enough on that. Let me just give you some kind of just takeaways here. I think I've kind of broken this down already pretty well. I hope. Let me know in the comments if you thought that was good. But here's the thing is I would go back if you got any listings at all that you've used professional photos, professional photographers for, or anybody else. And I would simply look through that. And if there's been anything altered that would kind of deceive the buyer, I would then put a banner on there. I would put the alternate photo up or something. So it's just very clear, even though it's not law in most areas, right? To be honest, I think that just elevates your professionalism. It shows that you care and you're trying to protect the consumer. And then if this does come out, you're ahead of the game and you're ready. And that's, to be honest, I think that's a good practice. I'm going to be talking to some friends that I have that do this, and I'm going to be advising this as well to make it easier for our agents. I think this is just something I think we need to be paying attention to. I think it's coming. I really, really do. I think this is going to trickle all the way down through because of the deception that these photos are leaving, because the majority of people begin their search online by looking at photos and then video, and then they start reading descriptions, that kind of stuff, and then they call. So that photo is what prompts them. So I think there's a big, big argument here, right? All right. Well, that is everything. Hopefully you got some value here, guys. Let me just end. I should say at the very beginning, and I'm going to do it again. If you're here now at the end, I'm going to throw this in the chat. This is my link because I have been asked multiple times on how people can communicate with me, connect with me, and get information. That's what this is. This is my Linktree. You can go there by going to linktree.ee. So it's linktr.ee/agent mentor Adam. If you go there, you will get to this page. You can check me out on YouTube there. You can also download a free first 28-day plan that helps you get up and running. That's what this is. I already covered that earlier. You can go back and watch that. But a lot of people have jumped in towards the end of the stream. You might not have seen this. And a lot of you guys have been asking for that. That PDF has taken a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about the past few weeks, condensing it into a quick little download PDF with some scripts and things like that, some advice and some action items that you guys can do as real estate agents to help you succeed. Also, you can join me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram, Twitch, X, and then sign up for an email. Plus, you can check out some of my photography work that I do. I like to take photos. I enjoy photos. You can check that out. This is Pick Fair. And I like taking photos. So you guys can check that out on there as well. Just kind of who I am. You get to know me a little bit better. I was also asked multiple times. Matter of fact, there was another real estate agent out of, where was he? He emailed me at Chicago or no, I don't know where he was. Anyway, he asked, like, how do I have my setup? What do I use to do live streaming and that kind of stuff? I went ahead and just created a little landing page here that basically shows the products that I use on the live stream and my setup here and what that looks like. So I just included my items there. So if you want to know how I'm doing what I'm doing, that's the products I have. That's what I use. So for those that ask, I've gotten a couple emails on that. So as we go through this, that's literally what I'm doing. I'm just kind of tweaking this thing. Look, my goal here is just to help you guys grow a good business. That's it. That's all I'm here for. Cut through the noise, find out real estate information, that kind of stuff. So Tracy, thank you for being here. I do appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you for being active in the chat. You were it today, so I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, guys, that's it for today. It's been a long show. I didn't mean to go this long, but I've got to jump onto another meeting now. So I hope you guys have a great day. That is your real estate brief for today. I hope you found this helpful. Please consider hitting the like button to tell YouTube you would like more of this type of content, because ultimately that does help you see more of the things you need to be better. Not just me, but other content as well that relates to the real estate industry. So that helps the algorithm figure out what you want to watch, not just me. But if you did find value in this, please consider subscribing, following, and joining this community of real estate agents that are focused on building a business that is absolutely relationship focused first. Man, there is always so much more that I could do, but today I am done. I will be back here tomorrow at 8:30 Eastern time. I will see you then. Take care.